Princess Jarakai stood on the bridge of the great warship and watched the human space station grow larger on the screen. Her tall body was covered in dark green scales that looked like armor. Sharp claws came from her fingers, and her yellow eyes could see in the dark. She was the best warrior of the Vextari Empire and had never lost a fight. Today would be no different. The space station called Kepler Station had been fighting her people for 6 months. This was far too long for such weak creatures. Humans were small and soft with no natural weapons. They had no scales to protect them and no claws to fight with. Most species in the galaxy fell to the Vextari in days or weeks. These humans were being stubborn. Zara single quotes. Kai touched the sword at her side. It was made from the strongest metal in the Empire and had cut down 1,000 enemies. Her father, the Emperor, had given it to her when she won her first battle at age 15. That was 10 years ago, and she had not stopped winning since then. The humans would learn today why the galaxy feared the Vextari. Her second in command walked up to her. His name was Krell, and he had served her family for many years. His scales were darker than hers and covered in scars from many battles. He bowed his head as he spoke to her. Princess, the final attack is ready. Our ships have the station surrounded. Their shields are almost broken, and their weapons are running out of power. We can finish this in 1 hour. Zarakai nodded, but did not take her eyes off the screen. Something about this fight felt different. The humans should have given up weeks ago when they ran out of food. They should have surrendered when their main weapon systems failed. But they kept fighting, even when they had no chance to win. Tell me about their leader again, Krell. His name is Captain Jake Morrison. He is a Marine, which means he is a soldier. The humans seem to follow him, even though he has no special rank among them. Our spies say he refuses to leave the station, even though he could escape in a small ship. Why would he stay to die? Krell made a sound that was like laughing. The humans are strange princes. They fight for things that make no sense. Jake Morrison stays because other humans are still on the station. He says he will not leave them behind. Zarakai found this hard to understand. In Vextari culture, the strong survived and the weak died. A good leader would save himself and find new followers later. Why would someone choose to die with weaklings? Who could not help themselves? How many humans are left on the station? About 3,000 princes. Most are not soldiers. They are doctors and engineers and families with children. They have no weapons and cannot fight. Then why do they not surrender to save their lives? The humans say they will not become slaves. They would rather die as free people than live. Under our rule, this made even less sense to Zarakai. Life was better than death, even if that life was hard. The Vextari had ruled many worlds, and their slaves lived decent lives as long as they obeyed. These humans were choosing to die for an idea that could not help them. She walked away from Krell and stood alone at the front of the bridge. Through the thick glass, she could see the space station spinning slowly in the darkness. It was damaged, and parts of it were dark where the power had failed. But lights still showed in many windows, and she knew humans were still alive inside. Her soldiers were the best in the galaxy. They had trained since childhood to fight and kill. Their weapons could cut through the strongest armor, and their ships could destroy planets. The humans had fought them for 6 months with broken equipment and empty stomachs. How was this possible? Zarakai pressed a button on her chair and spoke to all the ships in her fleet. Her voice was strong and clear, like the roar of a great beast. Warriors of the Empire, today we finish what we started. These humans have fought well, but their time is over. I will lead the final attack myself. Follow me, and we will take this station before the sun sets on their homeworld. Thousands of Vextari warriors heard her words and roared their approval. They respected strength and their princess had never shown them anything else. They would follow her into any battle and trust her to lead them to victory. But as Zarakai put on her battle armor, she felt something she had never felt before. It was not fear, because she did not know what fear was. It was more like curiosity mixed with something else she could not name. These humans were about to teach her something new, and she did not know if she was ready to learn it. The attack began with a storm of weapons fire that lit up space like a festival of lights. Vextory ships moved in perfect formation while their guns tore holes in the station's hull. Explosions bloomed like flowers, and pieces of metal flew in all directions. Zarakai led her personal guard through a hole they had blasted in the station side. The humans had built walls and barriers in the hallways, but these could not stop Vextory claws and strength. Her soldiers cut through the defenses like they were made of paper. The fighting was fierce, but short. Most humans could not match Vextory speed and power. But as they moved deeper into the station, Zarakai noticed something strange. The humans kept fighting even when they were hurt. They helped each other instead of running away. They shared their weapons with anyone who could use them. She came to a door, marked with symbols that meant medical area. Behind this door would be the wounded and sick humans who could not fight. It should be easy to capture them and end this battle. But as the door opened, she saw something that would change her life forever. A human man stood in the doorway with a weapon in his hands. He was not very tall, and his skin was pale, like he had not seen sunlight in many days. His uniform was torn and dirty, and she could see blood on his arms. This had to be the Captain Jake Morrison that Krell had told her about. What shocked Zarakai was not that he stood there with a weapon. It was the way he stood. He was not trying to attack her or run away. He was protecting the people behind him, even though he knew he could not win. His eyes met hers, and she saw no fear in them, only determination to do what he thought was right. For the first time in her life, Princess Zarakai hesitated before striking down an enemy. The fight between Zarakai and Jake Morrison lasted only minutes, but felt like hours. Jake moved in ways she had never seen before. He was not as strong or fast as a Vextory, but he used the walls and doors around him to help. When she swung her sword, he rolled under it and tried to hit her legs. When she grabbed for him, he slipped away like water. Most enemies tried to match her strength with their own strength and failed quickly. Jake did something different. He fought like he was dancing with her instead of trying to kill her. It was strange and beautiful and completely new to Zara Kai. But in the end her training and natural gifts were too much for any human. Her claws found their mark, and Jake fell to the floor with blood spreading under him. He was not dead, but he could not fight anymore. Zarakai stood over him with her sword ready to finish what they had started. Jake looked up at her and did something else that surprised her. He smiled, not the mean smile of someone who wanted to hurt her, but the kind smile of someone who was proud of what he had done. The medical bay is secure, princess. Take good care of the doctors and nurses in there. They never hurt anyone and only tried to help people get better. Zarakai stared down at this bleeding human who was asking her to be kind to his people. Even now, when he was about to die, he was thinking about others instead of himself. She had seen many enemies face death, and most of them begged for their lives or cursed her name. None of them had ever asked her to take care of someone else. You are my prisoner human. You will come with me to answer for your crimes against the Empire. Jake tried to sit up, but his wounds made it hard to move. What crimes, princess? We were defending our home from invaders. That is not a crime in any law I know. You resisted the rightful expansion of the Vextory Empire. You killed our soldiers and destroyed our ships. These are the crimes you will answer for. And what about your crimes, princess? You attacked peaceful people who never threatened your empire. You killed families and destroyed their homes. Who will judge you for these things? No one had ever asked Zarakai such questions before. In Vextari culture, the strong took what they wanted from the weak, and this was simply the way of the universe. The idea that she might be doing something wrong had never entered her mind. Her soldiers finished taking control of the station and brought all the human prisoners to the main docking bay. Jake was right about one thing. Most of these people were not soldiers. She saw doctors and engineers and teachers and children who looked scared and hungry. The Vextari way was to kill anyone who might cause trouble later and keep the rest as workers. Zarakai looked at the crowd of humans and tried to decide who should live and who should die. But every time she picked someone to execute, she remembered Jake asking her to take care of his people instead of the usual executions she ordered. All the humans to be taken to her ship as prisoners. This was unusual, but no one questioned the princess. They loaded Jake and the others into prison cells deep in the belly of the great warship, Worldrender, 3 days into the journey back to Vextari space. Zarakai found herself walking to the prison levels. She told herself she was going to question the human captain about military secrets. But really she wanted to understand what made him so different from other enemies she had fought. The prison guard was surprised to see her. Prisoners were usually left alone until they reached their destination. But he opened Jake's cell door and let her inside. Jake was sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. His wounds had been treated, but he still looked weak and tired. Princess Zarakai, I did not expect to see you here. Have you come to continue our fight? I have come to ask you questions, human. Your people fought longer and harder than any enemy we have faced. I want to know why. Jake smiled that same kind smile she remembered from the medical bay. What would you like to know, princess? Why did you not surrender when you ran out of food? Why did you keep fighting when your weapons failed? Why did you choose to die instead of accepting defeat? Because, princess, some things are more important than staying alive. We fought for our freedom and the freedom of our families. We fought because it was the right thing to do, even when it was hard. Zarakai sat down across from him. This was not something a Vextari princess should do, but she found herself curious about this strange human way of thinking. Explain this to me. How can anything be more important than life? Dead people cannot protect their families or help their friends. Dead people cannot do anything at all. You are right that dead people cannot do things, princess. But living people who give up their values and principles are not really alive either. They are just breathing bodies with no souls inside. I do not understand what you mean by souls. Jake thought for a moment about how to explain something so basic that most humans never questioned it. A soul is the part of you that decides what is right and wrong. It is the part that chooses to help others, even when helping costs you something. It is what makes you who you are, instead of just what you are. The Vextari believe that strength is what makes someone important. The strong rule and the weak serve. This has worked for thousands of years. Has it really worked, princess? Are your people happy? Do they create beautiful art or music? Do they help each other when times are hard? Do they have friends they can trust with their lives? These questions made Zarakai uncomfortable because she had never thought about them before. Vextari society was built on competition and dominance. Everyone was always trying to prove they were stronger than everyone else. Trust was weakness, and friendship was a luxury for species that could afford to be soft. Strength brings order, human. Order brings peace. Peace allows civilization to grow and expand. But what kind of civilization, princess? One where people are afraid of each other. One where the weak suffer so the strong can have more power. One where love and kindness are seen as flaws instead of gifts. Love and kindness are weaknesses that get people killed. In a dangerous galaxy, only the strong survive. Jake leaned forward and looked directly into her yellow eyes. Princes with respect, I think you have it backwards. Love and kindness are what make people strong enough to face any danger. When you love someone, you will fight harder for them than you ever would for yourself. When you are kind to others, they become your allies instead of your enemies. That makes no sense. Fear is a much better tool for controlling people than love. Fear only works until someone stronger comes along. But people who follow you because they love and respect you will stand with you even when the odds are against you. Like my crew stood with me on that station. Zarakai left Jake's cell with more questions than answers. Over the next few days, she found herself visiting other human prisoners and asking them similar questions. What she learned disturbed her. In ways she could not explain, the humans talked about their families and friends with a warmth she had never heard in Vextari voices. They shared their small amounts of food with prisoners who were weaker or hungrier. They comforted each other when someone cried and celebrated small victories together. When a young human woman got sick, the others took turns caring for her, even though it meant less rest for themselves. When an old man had trouble walking, they helped him move around instead of leaving him behind. They acted like they were all part of one big family, even though many of them had just met. One day, the ship's environmental systems began failing in the prison levels. The air was getting thin, and the temperature was dropping quickly. Standard Vextari procedure was to let the prisoners die rather than risk valuable crew members in a dangerous repair mission. But Jake volunteered to go into the broken machinery and fix the problem. He said he had worked on similar systems before and might be able to help. The repair area was full of dangerous radiation and toxic gases. Anyone who went in there might not come back out alive. Zarakai found herself in the repair bay watching Jake work inside a protective suit that was too big for his human body. He moved carefully through the dangerous machinery, following instructions from Vextari engineers who stayed safely outside. When sparks flew from a broken power line, Jake threw himself between the explosion and a fuel tank that would have destroyed half the ship. The blast threw him against a wall, but he got up and kept working. After 2 hours, he had fixed the environmental systems and saved not just the human prisoners, but many Vextari crew members as well. As Jake was helped out of the repair bay, Zarakai realized something that shook her to her core. This weak, soft human had just risked his life to save people who had captured him and planned to enslave him. He had shown more courage and honor in one afternoon than most Vextari warriors showed in their entire lives. For the first time since she was a child, Princess Zarakai began to wonder if everything she had been taught about strength and weakness might be wrong. Word of Jake's heroic repair work spread through the ship faster than Zarakai expected. Some Vextari crew members began talking about the strange human who had saved their lives. Others grumbled that prisoners should not be allowed to make. Vextari warriors look weak by comparison. The news reached Emperor Threekvaer through daily reports from the ship. Zarakai's father was not pleased to learn that his daughter had allowed a human prisoner to become famous among the crew. He sent a message ordering Jake to be brought to the Vextari homeworld for public execution. The human will die in the great arena, so all our people can see what happens to those who resist the Empire. You will perform the execution yourself. Daughter, to prove your loyalty, has not been corrupted by contact with these weak creatures. Zarakai read her father's message 3 times before the full meaning sank in. She was being ordered to kill Jake Morrison in front of thousands of Vextari citizens. The execution would be a festival day with food and entertainment, and betting on how long the human would last. She should have felt proud that her father trusted her with such an important duty. Instead, she felt something cold and heavy in her stomach that she had never experienced before. The thought of cutting Jake down while crowds cheered made her feel sick. Over the remaining days of their journey, Zarakai spent more and more time talking with Jake and the other human prisoners. Jake seemed to know that he was going to die soon, but this did not make him angry or desperate. If anything, he became more patient and kind to everyone around him. "How can you be so calm, human? Do you not understand what waits for you on my homeworld?" "I understand perfectly, princess. But being angry or afraid will not change what happens to me. I would rather spend my last days helping my people and maybe teaching you something useful." "What could you possibly teach me? You are the prisoner, and I am the captor. I could teach you about hope, princess. Hope is what kept us fighting on that space station when we had no chance to win. Hope is what makes people willing to sacrifice for others. Hope is what turns ordinary people into heroes." Hope sounds like a pretty word for refusing to accept reality. Jake laughed, but not in a mean way. "Hope is not about ignoring reality, princess. Hope is about believing that reality can be changed for the better. It is about working to create the world you want to live in, instead of just accepting the world you were born into. The world I was born into has made the Vextari the most powerful species in the galaxy. Why would I want to change that? Because power built on fear and suffering cannot last forever, princess. Eventually, people get tired of being afraid, and they fight back. Look at what happened on Kepler Station. We were completely outmatched, but we still fought because we believed in something better." Zarakai thought about this conversation for hours after leaving Jake's cell. The Vextari Empire controlled hundreds of worlds, but they had to keep large armies on most of them to prevent rebellions. They had won their power through conquest, but keeping it required constant vigilance and violence. She began observing her own crew more carefully and noticed things that had never bothered her before. The lower-ranking soldiers were afraid to speak honestly to their officers. Everyone competed with each other instead of working together. Trust was rare in friendship, was seen as a sign of weakness. When she compared this to how the human prisoners treated each other, the difference was shocking. The humans helped each other without being ordered to do so. They shared resources freely and supported anyone who was struggling. They had created a community, even in prison, while their own people remained isolated even in freedom. 3 days before reaching the Vextari homeworld, something happened that forced Zarakai to make a choice that would change her life forever. A group of young Vextari soldiers decided to have some fun with the female human prisoners. They opened several cells and dragged out women and girls for their entertainment. Jake heard the screaming from his cell and began shouting for the guards to stop what was happening. When no help came, he somehow broke free from his restraints and fought his way out of his locked cell. By the time Zarakai arrived, Jake was facing 6 armed Vextari soldiers with nothing but his bare hands. Let them go. These women have done nothing to deserve this treatment. The lead soldier was a young warrior named Korak, who had always resented taking orders from a female princess. He sneered at Jake and raised his weapon. "Stay back, human, or I will kill you slowly. These females belong to the Empire now, and we can do whatever we want with them. Over my dead body. That can be arranged." Jake charged at 6 armed warriors, knowing he would probably die, but unable to stand by while innocent people suffered. Zarakai watched this small, soft human throw himself at enemies, twice his size, because it was the right thing to do. Something broke inside her chest as she realized what she was seeing. This was not the behavior of a weak creature. This was the most courageous act she had ever witnessed. Jake was willing to die to protect people he barely knew simply because they needed help. "Stop." Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. Through silk. Every Vextari in the corridor froze at the command. "Release the prisoners immediately and return to your duties." Gorak turned to face her with confusion and anger in his yellow eyes. "Princess, these are just human females. We're not going to permanently damage them. A little fun will not affect their work value." I said, "Release them, soldier." That was not a request. "With respect, Princess, you have been acting strangely since we captured these humans. Perhaps you need to remember who your real people are." Zara-Kai felt rage building inside her like a storm gathering strength. But this was not the familiar rage of a warrior facing an enemy in battle. This was something new and much more dangerous. This was the rage of someone whose deepest beliefs had been challenged and found wanting. "My real people are those who act with honor and courage, soldier. I see more honor in this wounded human than I see in all 6 of you combined." She drew her sword in one smooth motion and pointed it at Gorak's throat. The other soldiers immediately backed away from their leader. No one had ever seen their princess defend an enemy against her own people. "You will apologize to these women for frightening them. You will return to your quarters and remain there until we reach homeworld. If I hear of any more incidents like this, I will personally throw you out an airlock. Do I make myself clear?" Gorak had no choice but to obey, but she could see the hatred in his eyes as he bowed his head. He and his friends would report this incident to higher-ranking officers. Word would eventually reach her father that she had chosen to protect human prisoners over Vextari soldiers. After the corridor cleared, Zara-Kai found herself alone with Jake, who was leaning against a wall, trying to catch his breath. Blood was running from several cuts on his face and arms, but he was smiling that same gentle smile she had seen so many times. "Thank you, Princess. You did not have to help us, but you chose to do the right thing anyway. I do not understand what is happening to me, human. Everything I believed about strength and weakness is being turned upside down. You show more courage than my best warriors and more wisdom than my experienced advisors. How is this possible? Maybe the problem is not with your beliefs about strength and weakness, Princess. Maybe the problem is with how your people define those words." "What do you mean?" "True strength comes from protecting others, not from hurting them. Real courage means doing what is right even when it costs you something important. Your people have confused power with strength and fear with respect." Jake pushed himself away from the wall and stood as straight as his injuries would allow. When he spoke, his voice was gentle, but firm, like a teacher explaining something important to a student. "You have the power to destroy worlds, Princess, but that does not make you strong. You have the power to make people obey you, but that does not mean they respect you. Real strength and real respect have to be earned through your actions, not taken by force. And how does one earn such things? By choosing to help instead of hurt. By choosing to protect instead of destroy. By choosing to lift others up instead of pushing them down. By becoming someone that people want to follow instead of someone they are afraid to disobey." That night, Zara-Kai stood alone on the observation deck, watching stars stream past the ship. In one more day, they would reach her homeworld, and Jake would be taken to the arena to die. She had the power to save him, but doing so would mean defying her father and probably destroying her own future in the Empire. For the first time in her life, Princess Zara-Kai understood what humans meant when they talked about having to choose between what was easy and what was right. The great arena of Thakmar had seen 1,000 executions, but never one like this. News of the human who had fought the mighty Princess Zara-Kai and lived had spread across the Vextari homeworld like wildfire. Betting houses were taking wagers on how long Jake Morrison would survive. Food vendors were preparing for the largest crowd in decades. Emperor Threekver sat on his golden throne overlooking the arena floor. His massive frame was covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed like black metal in the artificial sunlight. Scars from countless battles marked his scaled skin, and his yellow eyes burned with the fire of a born conqueror. Sci-Fi stood beside her father, wearing her finest battle gear. To the crowd, she looked like the perfect Vextory princess. Strong, and beautiful, and deadly. But inside her chest, her hearts were beating so fast she could barely breathe. In a few minutes, she would have to choose between obeying her father and following her conscience. Today, my daughter, you will prove that your time among the humans has not made you weak. Kill this prisoner quickly and cleanly to show our people that Vextory strength cannot be corrupted by alien ideas. Yes, father. The words came out automatically, but they tasted like poison in her mouth. Jake was brought into the arena in chains, but his head was held high. He had been given clean clothes, and his wounds had been properly treated. The Emperor wanted him to look healthy and strong, so the execution would be more impressive for the crowd. 50,000 Vextory citizens filled the arena seats. They roared their approval as their princess walked down the steps toward the arena floor. This was what they had come to see. The weak human who had dared to resist their empire would die by the claws of their greatest warrior. Sci-Fi reached the arena floor and drew her sword. The weapon had been in her family for generations and had never failed to bring death when called upon. Today it felt heavier than usual, as if the metal itself knew what was being asked of it. Jake stood 20 feet away, watching her with those strange human eyes that showed no fear. A Vextory executioner removed his chains and stepped back to give the princess room to work. The crowd fell silent, waiting for the show to begin. Any last words, human, before you pay for your crimes against the Empire? Jake smiled and spoke in a voice loud enough for the closest spectators to hear. I forgive you, Princess Arakai. I know this is not what you want to do. Sometimes good people are forced to do bad things by bad laws and bad leaders. The crowd stirred uneasily at these words. Prisoners were supposed to beg for mercy or curse their executioners. They were not supposed to offer forgiveness or question the justice of their punishment. Emperor Threekver leaned forward on his throne with displeasure clear on his scarred face. You will die for your disrespect, human. My daughter will cut you down like the worthless creature you are. Sci-Fi raised her sword above her head in the traditional execution stance. One quick strike would end Jake's life and satisfy her father's command. The crowd held its breath, waiting for blood to flow onto the arena sand. But as she looked into Jake's eyes, she saw something that stopped her cold. He was not looking at her with hatred or fear. He was looking at her with compassion and understanding. Even now, when she was about to kill him, he was trying to make this easier for her. Do what you believe is right, princess. I trust you to make the correct choice. Those words hit Sci-Fi like a physical blow. Jake was not asking her to spare his life. He was asking her to be true to the person she had become during their conversations. He was asking her to choose her own path instead of blindly following orders. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. She could kill Jake and remain a dutiful daughter who never questioned authority. Or she could save him and become someone who stood up for what was right, even when it cost everything she had ever known. The sword trembled in her hands as she realized what she was about to do. Around the arena, 50,000 voices began chanting for blood. Behind her, she could feel her father's eyes burning into her back. But none of that mattered anymore, because she finally understood what Jake had been trying to teach her. True strength was not about following orders without question. True strength was about having the courage to do what was right, even when everyone else said it was wrong. True strength was about protecting the innocent, even when protecting them put you in danger. Sci-Fi lowered her sword and threw it to the ground, where it landed with a ringing sound that echoed through the suddenly silent arena. 50,000 Vextory citizens stared in shock as their princess walked over to Jake and stood between him and the Imperial Guards. I will not kill this man. He has committed no crime, except defending his people from invasion. If that is a crime worthy of death, then every Vextory warrior should be executed for the same offense. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some spectators roared with anger, while others sat in stunned silence. Emperor Threekvey rose from his throne with rage distorting his features into something truly frightening. You'll pick up that sword and complete your duty, daughter. This human dies today, whether you kill him or my guards do. Then your guards will have to kill me too, father, because I will not allow an innocent man to die while I have the power to save him. You would choose this alien over your own family, over your own people, over everything you were born to inherit. Zarakai looked up at her father with sadness in her yellow eyes. I choose what is right over what is easy, father. Jake Morrison taught me that real power comes from protecting people, not from destroying them. Real strength comes from showing mercy, not from showing cruelty. Guards arrest the princess for treason and execute the human immediately. A dozen armed Vextory warriors began moving toward Zarakai and Jake. These were elite soldiers who had served the imperial family for years. They should have obeyed without question, but something made them hesitate. Perhaps it was seeing their princess defend someone else with such courage. Perhaps it was hearing her speak about mercy and justice in ways they had never heard before. That moment of hesitation was all Zarakai needed. She grabbed Jake's hand and ran toward a maintenance tunnel that led under the arena. Behind them she could hear her father screaming orders and the sound of soldiers giving chase. The tunnel was dark and narrow, but Zarakai knew every passage in the arena from childhood games of hide and seek. She led Jake through a maze of pipes and machinery toward an exit that opened near the royal landing platforms. Where are we going, princess? Away from here, Jake. Away from everything I used to believe in. You are right about strength and courage and doing what is right. I just wish I had learned these lessons before it was too late. It is never too late to start doing the right thing, princess. Every day is a chance to become better than you were yesterday. They reached the landing platform where several small spacecraft waited for members of the royal family. Zarakai chose the fastest ship and began the startup sequence as alarms began wailing across the capital city. Soon every military vessel on the planet would be hunting for them. As their ship lifted off into the night sky, Jake looked back at the lights of the great city where Zarakai had grown up. I am sorry you had to give up your home and family to save me, princess. That was not what I wanted to happen. Zarakai guided their ship toward the edge of the atmosphere, where they would jump to hyperspace and disappear into the vastness of the galaxy. For the first time since she was a child, she did not know what the future would bring. But for the first time in her life, she was truly free to choose her own path. You did not make me give up anything, Jake Morrison. You helped me find something much more valuable than a throne or a title. You helped me find out who I really am underneath all the armor and weapons and royal blood. And who are you, princess? Zarakai smiled as their ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them away from everything she had ever known toward something completely new and uncertain and full of hope. I am someone who protects people instead of conquering them. Someone who shows mercy instead of cruelty. Someone who fights for justice instead of just fighting for victory. Thanks to you, I am finally the person I was always meant to be. 3 months after escaping from Thakmer, Zarakai and Jake were living as fugitives on the edge of known space. Emperor Threekver had declared his daughter dead to the Empire and sent his most skilled hunters to track them down. Wanted posters with their faces appeared on every world in Vextory space, offering massive rewards for their capture. But instead of hiding in fear, Zarakai had chosen to fight back in a way that shocked both the Empire and the galaxy at large. She began attacking Vextory prison ships and slave transports, freeing thousands of captured beings from dozens of different species. Her small rebellion grew as freed slaves joined her cause, and several Vexthari soldiers abandoned their posts to follow her. Jake served as her closest advisor, helping her develop new tactics that combined Vexthari military strength with human creativity and compassion. Instead of simply destroying enemy ships, they disabled them and gave the crews a choice: join the rebellion or be left stranded, but alive on the nearest habitable world. Word of the rebel princess spread faster than Imperial forces could contain it. On conquered worlds, people began whispering about Zarakai the Broken, who fought for freedom instead of conquest. Some called her a traitor, while others called her a hero, but everyone agreed she had become something the galaxy had never seen before. Their hidden base was an abandoned mining station in an asteroid field where they maintained a fleet of captured Vexthari ships. Freed slaves worked alongside former Imperial soldiers, repairing equipment and planning rescue missions. Jake had been right about people working together being stronger than people competing against each other. But their success also brought greater danger. Emperor Threekver was growing desperate to stop his daughter before her ideas spread throughout the Empire. He had already faced 3 minor rebellions on conquered worlds, where local populations tried to copy Zarakai's methods. The trap came in the form of a distress signal from a human colony ship that had been captured by Imperial forces. The message claimed that 5,000 families, including many children, were being held in the cargo holds of a massive prison transport. Zarakai knew it was probably a trap, but she could not ignore people who needed help. "This is too dangerous. Princess, my own people are being used as bait, but we cannot save them if we are all captured or killed trying." "Then what do you suggest, Jake? That we leave those families to die or become slaves? How is that different from what my father would do?" "We find another way. We gather more information and plan a rescue that has a real chance of success instead of rushing in and getting everyone killed." But before they could develop a better plan, scouts reported that the prison transport was preparing to execute 100 hostages every day until Zarakai surrendered herself. The first executions were scheduled to begin in 6 hours. Zarakai made the hardest decision of her life. She would attack the prison transport with her small fleet and try to rescue as many hostages as possible, even though it meant facing her father's entire battle group. Jake would lead the rescue mission while she kept the Imperial forces busy. "You do not have to do this, Princess. We could find another way if we had more time." "There is no more time, Jake. Those families will start dying in 6 hours, and I will not let that happen. Besides, someone needs to face my father and end this war before it spreads to the entire galaxy." The battle began in the shadow of a red giant star whose radiation interfered with long-range sensors. Zarakai led her ships in a desperate charge against overwhelming odds, while Jake and his team fought their way through the prison transport looking for hostages. What they found was exactly what Zarakai had expected. The cargo holds were filled with empty cages and holographic projectors showing fake images of human families. The real trap was waiting in the command center, where Emperor Threekver sat on a portable throne surrounded by his personal guard. "Hello, daughter. I wondered when you would finally come home." Zarakai stood in the doorway, wearing battle armor that had been painted with symbols of all the species she had freed from Imperial slavery. Her sword was the same one she had thrown down in the arena, but now it represented something completely different. "I am not your daughter anymore, father. I am Zarakai the Liberator, and I have come to end your reign of terror. You have come to die, child. Your little rebellion ends today, and the galaxy will see what happens to those who challenge Imperial authority." The fight between father and daughter was like nothing the galaxy had ever witnessed. Emperor Threekver was older but more experienced, while Zarakai was younger but fighting for something she believed in. They crashed through bulkheads and shattered equipment as their battle raged through the ship. But this was not just a fight between two warriors. It was a battle between two different ideas about what strength really meant. Threekver fought with the brutal efficiency of someone who had spent his life conquering others. Zarakai fought with the determination of someone who had found something worth protecting. You could have ruled the galaxy, daughter. You could have had power beyond imagination. Instead, you chose to throw it all away for these worthless alien creatures. They are not worthless, father. They are people with hopes and dreams and families just like us. The only difference is that we have been taught to see them as less than ourselves. Sentiment will not save you from my claws, child. No, father. But love will give me the strength to do what must be done. The final exchange lasted only seconds, but changed the course of galactic history. Zarakai allowed her father to land a seemingly fatal blow while positioning herself for one perfect strike. As Threekver raised his weapon for the killing stroke, she drove her sword through his heart. Emperor. Threekver looked down at the blade protruding from his chest with something like surprise in his yellow eyes. He had always believed that strength came from the willingness to kill without mercy. He had never understood that sometimes real strength came from the willingness to die for others. How, daughter? I taught you everything you know about fighting. You taught me how to kill, father. But Jake Morrison taught me what to fight for. That made all the difference. As news of the Emperor's death spread through the Imperial fleet, chaos erupted in the ranks. Some ships tried to continue fighting, while others surrendered or simply fled into hyperspace. The Vexthery Empire that had dominated the galaxy for centuries began collapsing in a matter of hours. Zarakai found Jake in the prison, Transport's medical bay, where he was treating wounded rebels and Imperial soldiers without distinction. Even in the middle of a battle, he was trying to help anyone who needed healing. Is it over, princess? The fighting is over, Jake, but the real work is just beginning. Destroying an empire is easy compared to building something better in its place. Over. The following months, Zarakai worked with leaders from dozens of species to create a new kind of government. Instead of rule by conquest, it would be based on cooperation and mutual respect. Instead of the strong dominating the weak, all people would have a voice in their own destiny. It was not easy work. There were arguments and setbacks and moments when it seemed like the old ways of thinking would win. But Jake was there to remind everyone that change was possible, if they were willing to work for it. The new Galactic Council met on a space station that orbited no particular world, so that no species could claim dominance over the others. Zarakai served as the first chancellor, not because she was the strongest, but because she had proven she could change when change was needed. Years later, when young beings from across the galaxy came to learn about the revolution that had freed them from imperial rule, they always asked the same question. How had one human changed the most feared warrior princess in the galaxy? Jake would smile his gentle smile and give the same answer every time. I did not change her. I just helped her discover who she really was under all that armor. Princess. Zarakai always had the capacity for compassion and justice. She just needed someone to show her it was safe to let those qualities guide her actions. And Zarakai would add her own thoughts about the human who had saved not just her life, but her soul. Jake Morrison taught me that true strength comes from protecting others, not from conquering them. True courage means doing what is right, even when it costs you everything. True power comes from lifting others up instead of pushing them down. She was indeed a fearless alien princess, until one human changed everything. But the change was not something imposed from outside. It was something that had always been waiting inside her heart for the right moment to emerge. Jake Morrison had simply been brave enough to help her find it. The galaxy was a better place because sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who chooses mercy over violence and love over fear. Sometimes the greatest victory comes not from defeating your enemies, but from turning them into friends. And sometimes one act of kindness can start a revolution that changes everything.